Hello again everybody. So here it is, the V-strom 250 at last. I've been waiting for a while for this to come out. It is now out in the UK, and Robinson's Foundry down in Canterbury have been kind enough to let me take it out for a ride and sort of first impressions. So we'll start as we always do with the styling. It does look pretty much the same as its larger capacity siblings, the 650 and the 1000, with the obvious exception of this front light, which is completely new, the sort of fisheye type thing. I must admit, when I first saw it in the pictures I wasn't entirely sure about it, but actually in the flesh it looks pretty good. Obviously, you know, the rest of it is styled very much like the BMW GS's, but with enough differences that it's not going to cause any court cases. Just moving around the side here, it's got quite nice lines to it, quite a lovely style. The exhaust looks quite cool for a standard exhaust. I mean, you know, they're never the prettiest things in the world, but actually it looks pretty good, and again it looks exactly the same as the ones on the larger capacity models. I'll show you this quickly. So it has also got built-in pannier attachments in the side here. You've got your rear rack to put your top box on, all metal, very nice. The rear light is a tiny little thing, but it's LED, so it should be quite bright, which is good. I'll just move around the front again here. I'll quickly show you around the side here. It does have... yeah, here we go. So it comes with a little power outlet, which is quite nice. It doesn't have a massive amount of other equipment on it, to be perfectly honest. The brakes are pretty standard. They're just Tokiko ones, if I remember rightly. Nothing too amazing, but then the bike doesn't weigh out. It's quite heavy, but at the same time, it doesn't require too much stopping. So, you know, they are more than effective enough. But yeah, I mean, overall equipment-wise, it doesn't have an awful lot on it. It's got that power socket. It doesn't have any sort of riding modes or anything like that. It's all very, very basic equipment, as you'd expect from a small capacity bike anyway, to be fair. There's no heated grips here or heated seat or anything like that. Yeah, equipment-wise it is quite lacking, but when it comes to actual design, it's quite good. So the windscreen here, this is actually very good. So this has been put through a wind tunnel repeatedly in order to get the design just right, that it actually does its job, which is interesting because it doesn't look like it would, but in actual fact this windscreen does do its job very well. Now, I've had problems with windscreens in the past, because it doesn't seem to matter how well they're designed or how adjustable they are. I can never seem to get the damn things right so they don't buffet wind around my head like an absolute sod. Whereas this thing, no adjustment whatsoever, and yet it seems to work incredibly well. And in actual fact, the whole bike in general seems to be designed to throw the wind around you rather than into you, which on a day like today when it's cold and horrible is actually quite appreciated, because it means that I'm not getting freezing cold air you know, supercharged straight into me, because obviously as you're going along it's just going to hit you. But no, this does a really, really good job of chucking the wind around you, which I was quite impressed by. Now, the engine is a parallel twin, producing 25 brake horsepower. It's the same engine from the, Inazuma 250, albeit tweaked for the Euro 4, and also I think they've sort of tuned it for low to mid-range torque, which, again, you know, because it's meant to be an adventure bike, it's just it's designed for touring mostly. I mean, I don't think this is much of an adventure bike as such. I don't think it will do much in the way of off-roading. I think you might find it will very quickly become overwhelmed off-road. I mean, it has got this fantastic metal guard at the bottom here for if you do find yourself going off-road, but I wouldn't recommend taking this sort of properly off-roading. It's not like a Honda Africa twin or anything. This is more of a road-going tourer that looks like an adventure bike. But, you know, overall I think it's fantastic. What should I say? I'm pretty sure, actually. Okay, so here's an interesting one for you guys. I reckon, because this is obviously a baby V-strom, or it's meant to be, but I'm wondering whether this is actually meant more as a commuter. And the reason I say this is because I think this is the replacement for the Inazuma. Because the Inazuma it wasn't all that popular, it didn't really kick off all that well. They then kind of thought to themselves, well, you know, the adventure bikes are doing quite well, let's see if we can do something about this. And they adjusted the Inazuma and brought out the Inazuma F, which was kind of adventure-y, but again, that didn't really quite cut it. So I think what they've done now is just taken that engine and stuck it in a V-strom. And I think they're hoping that this will be kind of more of a sort of popular commuter. And I can kind of see that working, actually, because the problem is, if you were to compare this bike to its competition, so the Kawasaki Versys 300, the Honda CRF Rally, and the BMW GS 310, this is very difficult because firstly, the BMW and the Kawasaki produce more power than this, and weigh slightly less. The Honda produces the same power and weighs quite a bit less. So if you're just looking at the specs, it's very difficult to justify buying this bike, especially when you consider they're all basically exactly the same price. But I think, really, you should be looking at this less as competition for them and more as Suzuki's answer to a everyday commuter. But an everyday commuter that's got excellent styling, very good rider comfort, and the potential to go on a long journey comfortably. I think that's where it sort of sits, because I don't think it compares to the BMW or the Kawasaki. I think if you were to look between this and the Honda, I would definitely say this is the better bike, because even though the Honda's got more, a better power to weight ratio, it doesn't handle as well. The Honda is a hell of a lot lighter, which does make it quite skittish, whereas this, actually, the weight does work a little bit to its advantage, in that it is a well-planted bike and handles very well. But compared to the Kawasaki and the BMW, I'm not so sure. So, I would definitely say this is more of a everyday commuter than an adventure bike, because as I said before, this isn't going to go off-road particularly well, but then neither does the 650 or the 1000. They're more kind of weekend adventure bikes, like more tourers, I would say. Actually, I would say this is an adventure style tourer. But I'll tell you what, guys, I like it. I like this a lot, actually. To actually ride it, sitting on it now, it's quite comfortable. The seat is a little bit harder than some of the other bikes I've ridden, but it feels more than comfortable enough. My lanky legs are in quite a nice position. I don't feel too cramped on this. As I've said before, I am 6 foot, so I do have a tendency to feel quite cramped on some bikes, but this actually, I find this very, very comfortable to ride. The engine, albeit not that powerful, is very, very smooth. I must admit, it does feel quite gutless though. It's I don't know exactly what it is, but it kind of feels a little bit like a 125. Obviously it's got a bit more power than that, but it just doesn't really, it doesn't really have much pull to it, which is quite disappointing. The other thing is, when you start getting up to the higher speeds, sort of like 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, the engine really does sound like it's screaming, which, to me, I don't know, I find that a little bit irritating. I'm sure the engine's absolutely fine. I'm pretty sure it can sit at those speeds screaming along all day long, but I just find it a little bit whiny, because you really need to wind the engine up in order to get any real performance out of it, which, as I say, it's a little bit of a shame. But then I can't really complain too much, because despite this, as I say, it is very, very smooth, and if I was to be perfectly honest, I could see myself sitting on this bike all day long, comfortably, happily, touring around without any issues whatsoever. I haven't managed to find exactly what it is about this bike that makes it stand out yet though, which is a bit difficult because I am a lover of Suzukis. I really, really do love them, but you know, it's come late to the party. It's up against the likes of the Versys 300, the BMW GS310, and it's not, at the minute, it's just not competing. Like, I can't find a particular thing about this bike that would make it better than either of any of those. Like, you know, I don't know what its unique selling point is yet. The only thing I can think is, as I said before, if you were to perhaps not compare this to them and instead consider it as a commuter. But the problem is by the very nature of its styling and everything else, you're gonna compare it to the Kawasaki and the Honda and the BMW. You just are. They have bought out a small capacity adventure bike, and that is the market. So I don't know, guys. I'm very, very torn with this bike. I want to love it, I really do, but at the same time I have to acknowledge that it is not necessarily the best bike, especially, as I said, they're all the same price. I mean, this is around about £5,000. For the same £5,000, give or take a couple of £100, you can have the Kawasaki Versys 300, which weighs slightly less and produces 40 horsepower instead of 25. And of course, all of these bikes are can be ridden on an A2 license as well. So it's a difficult one. I mean, as I say, it's very well designed, and it is, you know, it does do a fantastic job of keeping the wind and stuff off the rider. It's, you know, it is well built as well, I must say. You know, the actual build quality on this bike is very good. I've not seen the build quality on the BMW or the Kawasaki, but I'm pretty sure they're quite good as well though. So I don't know, guys, it's a very interesting one. I mean, if you like the look of this bike and you've got your heart set on it, I would definitely say it's a great bike. There's no doubt about it, and so long as you don't compare it to the other bikes in the market, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's fantastic. It will cruise very, you know, quite happily at 70 miles an hour. It's got a very lovely smooth engine. It's comfortable. It's everything you'd expect. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a sort of £5,000, and you know, being a small capacity bike, it's never going to have the power and equipment and everything else to blow your mind away. But you know, if you're just looking for something that's easy to ride, well planted but not too heavy, because you know, half the reason a lot of people would go for this bike is because they either don't have the license or they just don't want to be dealing with the weight of the much larger 650 and 1000. Then I would say this is definitely a very, very, very good bike to go for. Right, I'm going to go that way. So yeah, there you go. Just very quickly before I finish, I'll let you guys know the miles per gallon. So this has a claimed fuel efficiency of about 88 miles per gallon, so that might be another selling point actually. I don't know, I didn't get time to research the fuel efficiency of the other models, but yeah, I mean, 88 miles to the gallon is really, really good. So again, you know, if you're looking for a bike that you can just go for a nice relaxed tour on and know it's going to cost you next to nothing, then this is definitely a very, very, very good bike to go for. Well, anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there because it is getting very cold out here now. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a like. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. Go check out my other videos. As I said before, there won't be any more now until after Christmas, so I will catch you guys in the new year. Do have a very Merry Christmas. I'll catch you again soon.